Before Constantine ever lifted a sword, before a single banner rose above a legion, the Roman Empire was already dying. Not with a single catastrophic blow, but with a slow, grinding unraveling that no one could stop. In the early 4th century, Rome looked powerful from a distance, still draped in the illusion of grandeur, but up close, the world's mightiest empire resembled an aging colossus whose foundations had begun to crumble. Its borders stretched too far, its armies were exhausted, its generals schemed against one another, and its rulers, those emperors who were meant to embody divine authority, were now little more than regional warlords with imperial titles. Only a generation earlier, Diocletian had attempted to save Rome by dividing it, creating a system known as the Tetrarchy, 4 emperors ruling a single empire. It was a brilliant idea on parchment, a masterpiece of administrative logic, but in the real world, ambition has always eaten logic alive. Rome's generals did not share power. They competed for it, craved it, killed for it. And when Diocletian retired, his carefully balanced system collapsed faster than anyone expected. Within months, rival emperors emerged. Within years, the empire fractured into competing courts and clashing armies. By the time Constantine entered the stage, Rome no longer had one emperor, it had 6 men claiming the throne, each insisting that they alone were the rightful ruler of the world. And behind them stood legions loyal not to Rome, not to the Senate, not to the eternal glory of the empire, but to the men who paid them. These legions fought not on distant frontiers, but across Roman roads, through Roman towns, spilling Roman blood. Civil war was no longer a threat, it was the empire's natural state. In this chaos, one man moved with a calmness that seemed almost supernatural. A general with charisma that magnetized soldiers. A man trained in the courts of emperors, yet hardened by the uncertainties of war. Constantine, son of Constantius, grandson of a soldier, descendant of emperors, not by law, but by destiny. But he was not yet the Constantine history remembers. He was merely one contender among many, a commander whose fate would soon hinge on a single moment, a single vision, a single battle. What no one knew, not even Constantine himself, was that Rome's salvation would come not through politics, nor diplomacy, nor any scheme of emperors. It would come through a moment of revelation at the edge of a river, and the price of that revelation would reshape the world forever. But to understand why Constantine won the empire in a single battle, we must first understand the man he had to defeat. A ruler whose ambition equaled Constantine's and whose power, for a time, eclipsed it.
Before Constantine marched on Rome, another man ruled the ancient capital. Maxentius, son of an emperor, heir to a dynasty, and a ruler determined to hold power at any cost. But Maxentius did not rise through legitimacy or noble acclaim. He rose through fear, manipulation, and the desperate hunger of the Roman people for stability. When the Tetrarchy crumbled, it created a vacuum so enormous that only boldness could fill it. Maxentius seized that boldness. He proclaimed himself princeps, then emperor, then dominus, titles meant to evoke ancient Roman authority. And Rome, exhausted by chaos, embraced him. But Maxentius was not content with applause. He needed control. He fortified Rome like a paranoid king expecting betrayal, rebuilding the ancient Aurelian walls, turning the eternal city into a fortress bristling with towers, gates, and legions. He minted coins bearing his face, hosted lavish games, bribed the praetorians with wealth, and commanded loyalty through spectacle. To the people, he was a savior. To the Senate, he was a tyrant. To the military, he was a necessary evil. And to Constantine, he was the final obstacle. For years, the two men watched each other from opposite ends of the empire. Constantine ruled in the north, disciplined, patient, favored by the legions of Gaul and Britain. Maxentius ruled in the south, arrogant, calculating, surrounded by courtiers who fed him flattery like wine. Both knew a reckoning would come, and both prepared for it. But Constantine waited longer. He let Maxentius exhaust his goodwill. Let the citizens of Rome feel the weight of taxation and corruption. Let the army grow resentful under Maxentius's heavy hand. Because Constantine understood a truth older than Rome itself. Empires are not won by force alone. They are won by timing. By 312 AD, Maxentius had ruled for 6 years. The Senate despised him. The people tolerated him. The gods, it seemed, ignored him. And yet he sat on the throne of Rome, the ultimate prize, one that Constantine could not claim without plunging the empire into yet another civil war. But then an event occurred, small at first, insignificant in appearance, that changed everything. Maxentius consulted the Sibylline books, the ancient oracles of Rome, seeking assurance that his reign would endure, and the prophecy he received was deceptively hopeful. On this day, the enemy of Rome shall perish. Maxentius misinterpreted it. He assumed it meant Constantine. He prepared for battle convinced destiny was on his side. But prophecy has always been a mirror reflecting only what one chooses to see, and Maxentius was about to learn that destiny is never so simple. Constantine was marching, and nothing, not Rome, not prophecy, not the gods of old, could stop what was coming.
It happened late in the afternoon. The sky was still bright, yet the air had taken on an unusual stillness. Constantine stood apart from his officers, contemplating the coming battle, when something appeared above the horizon, a shape that seemed to shimmer against the sun. His soldiers saw it first, murmurs, then shouts, then stunned silence, because the sky held something impossible, a cross of light hovering above the sun, radiant, unmistakable. And beneath it, words, Greek words, visible not to the ears but to the mind, as if whispered by the universe itself. In this sign, conquer. En tuto nika. We cannot know what Constantine truly felt in that moment. Awe, fear, revelation, or perhaps the weight of destiny settling upon him like an ancient crown. But his response is recorded by every historian who chronicled that era. He did not dismiss the vision. He embraced it. That night, he dreamed again. A figure, some said an angel, others said a divine messenger, held the same symbol and commanded him to place it on the shields of his soldiers. A new emblem, a sacred monogram, the key rho, the intersecting Greek letters forming the earliest symbol of Christ. And so, on the morning before the greatest battle of his life, Constantine ordered his soldiers to mark their shields not with eagles, not with Roman gods, not with symbols of imperial power, but with a sign that had never before marched with a Roman army. A sign of a faith that was still persecuted by many, still debated, still emerging. This moment, this blending of faith, strategy, and destiny would reshape not only the empire, but the entire world. But faith alone did not win battles. Constantine still had to face Maxentius, whose armies waited just beyond the Tiber River, fortified, numerous, and confident. Because that prophecy Maxentius consulted still echoed through Rome. On this day, the enemy of Rome shall perish. Maxentius believed it. He trusted it. He prepared to defend the city. But he did not know that Constantine marched under a sign no Roman emperor had ever dared to carry. He did not know the river would betray him. He did not know his walls would be worthless. And he did not know that the prophecy spoke of him. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge was coming. and only one emperor would walk away.
As Constantine descended into the plains north of Rome, he found Maxentius waiting, secure, entrenched, confident behind fortifications. But Constantine understood a truth Maxentius had forgotten. Fortifications do not win wars. Decisions do. And Maxentius made one decision that sealed his fate. Instead of remaining safely inside Rome, surrounded by its vast walls, he marched out to confront Constantine in open battle. It was a decision so foolish that even his advisors begged him to reconsider. But Maxentius was guided by prophecy, by arrogance, and by a misunderstanding of destiny. He believed the gods favored him. He believed Constantine's march was madness. And above all, he believed he would win. So he led his massive army out of Rome, across the Tiber, onto the plains leading to the Milvian Bridge. And to secure his retreat, he ordered a temporary bridge of wooden pontoons built across the river. It would later become the instrument of his destruction. Meanwhile, Constantine's army, smaller, outnumbered, carrying an unfamiliar symbol into battle, advanced with a determination that defied their circumstances. Officers rode along the lines, reminding soldiers of their victories in Gaul, their triumphs in Britain, the iron discipline that had carried them through winter campaigns and savage frontier wars. Constantine himself rode at the front, visible, calm, purposeful. He did not hide behind walls. He did not cower in Rome. He came to fight. The stage was set. Two emperors, two visions of Rome, two destinies colliding at a river that had already witnessed centuries of triumph and tragedy. But this battle, this single encounter, would eclipse all others. Because in the next hour, on the plains of northern Rome, the fate of the empire would be decided not by numbers, not by fortifications, not by prophecy, but by a single miscalculation and a commander who believed he could not lose. And when the battle began, it did so with a ferocity that neither emperor had ever witnessed. The clash began under a pale autumn sun, the air thick with dust, shouts, and the metallic scent of iron. Maxentius arranged his forces in dense, layered formations, tight ranks of infantry, supported by cavalry and backed by reserves drawn from Rome's elite praetorians. His army dwarfed Constantine's. By numbers alone, he should have crushed him. But Constantine did not fight like a man hoping to survive. He fought like a man who believed he had already won. The moment the signal sounded, his cavalry surged forward, not recklessly, but with a precision refined through years of frontier warfare. Their charge slammed into Maxentius's cavalry before they could even maneuver, breaking their formation and sowing panic. Then the infantry advanced, shields locked, spears thrusting, the key row glimmering on shields as if touched by the sun. Constantine rode behind them, directing movements with calm authority, never hesitating, never doubting. Maxentius watched from a hill overlooking the battlefield. He expected Constantine's smaller force to falter quickly, but instead he saw something strange. His own men, hemmed in by their dense formations, unable to maneuver, unable to breathe. Constantine's soldiers advanced relentlessly, using space and flexibility, slicing through the packed ranks like a blade cutting cloth. The more Maxentius committed reserves, the more his lines blurred, twisted, tangled, and soon his advantage, his enormous army, became a weakness. His soldiers had no room to withdraw, no space to reform, no chance to regroup. It was as if the battlefield itself turned against him. Then, at the worst possible moment, the rumor began to spread that Constantine's god
fought with him, that the shining symbol on the shields had power, that Maxentius's prophecy had been interpreted wrongly. Panic, once ignited, spreads faster than fire. Maxentius realized the danger too late. His front lines began to collapse, pressure from behind pushing them toward a single fatal direction, the Tiber River. And behind them waited only one path of escape, the temporary wooden bridge he had ordered built. A bridge that was never meant to carry a retreating army. The moment was coming when the fate of Rome would hinge on a single crossing, a crossing that could not hold.
The retreat was not orderly. It was desperation incarnate. Maxentius's soldiers, once confident, now fled in a tidal surge of armor, shields, and terror. They rushed toward the temporary bridge, pushing, shoving, trampling one another in a frantic attempt to escape Constantine's relentless advance. The riverbanks shook with chaos. The wooden pontoons groaned under the weight of thousands. Chains strained, planks bent, officers screamed for discipline, but no army in history has ever held formation while losing a civil war on its own doorstep. Maxentius himself hesitated. Should he stay and rally? Should he flee? Should he make a final stand? In the end, fear made the decision for him. He pushed toward the bridge with his guard, believing he could reach the safety of Rome and fight another day. But fate had already chosen its moment. The bridge collapsed. Not slowly, not gradually, but catastrophically, snapping in the center, breaking like a spine under the weight of too many running men. The collapse swallowed legionaries by the hundreds. Armor dragged them down into the swirling, merciless waters of the Tiber. Shields floated, spears vanished, bodies collided in a desperate struggle to survive. Maxentius fell in. There was no final speech, no heroic defiance, no dramatic stand. Only water, panic, and the crushing weight of destiny. His armor pulled him beneath the surface, his horse toppled, his guards tried to save him but failed, and as the sun dipped behind the hills, the Emperor of Rome drowned in the river he had chosen as his battlefield. His body would be found hours later, washed ashore, stripped of imperial dignity, recognized only by the purple cloak still wrapped around him. The prophecy had come through. The enemy of Rome had perished, but it was not Constantine. And as Maxentius vanished beneath the water, the gates of Rome stood open, waiting for the emperor who had claimed victory under a sign of light. Constantine had won the battle, but what he was about to do next would change the empire far more than any victory on the field.
Rome had seen countless triumphs. Julius Caesar, Augustus, Trajan, but none resembled what happened on the morning of Constantine's entry. There were no raucous celebrations, no drunken mobs, no roaring chariots decorated in gold. The city was quiet, almost reverent. The people lined the streets, not cheering wildly, but watching with a strange mixture of relief, awe, and uncertainty. They had feared Constantine would storm the city, loot it, punish it for supporting Maxentius. Instead, he halted outside the walls and waited, signaling his intention to enter peacefully. It was a calculated gesture. Rome had always admired strength, but had also revered restraint. When Constantine finally rode through the gates, he did so not wearing the purple silk of emperors, but in the armor he had worn in battle, dust-covered, dented, and unpolished. This was no triumph of vanity. It was a statement. I did not win Rome for myself. I won it for the empire. Maxentius's body was taken through the streets according to tradition, his head displayed to prove the tyrant was dead. But Constantine did not gloat. He refused excessive celebrations. He refused to enter the city on foot as a conqueror. He refused to credit Rome's gods. Instead, he did something no emperor had ever done before. he entered the Senate House and dedicated his victory not to Jupiter, not to Mars, not to any deity of Rome's ancient pantheon, but to the one God whose sign he had carried into battle. The senators were stunned. The people were confused. The world shifted. That night, Constantine issued a series of decisions that would ripple through history. He disbanded the Praetorian Guard, the kingmakers who had murdered emperors for generations. He honored the soldiers who had fought for him. He restored property seized by Maxentius. Most importantly, he embraced a new identity, not just as a Roman emperor, but as a ruler guided by a faith Rome had never before accepted. The empire had a new master, and the old world was beginning to fade. Victory at the Milvian Bridge did not simply end a civil war. It began a transformation so monumental that historians still struggle to describe it. With Maxentius gone, Constantine became the undisputed ruler of the West. But he did not celebrate long. He moved quickly, purposefully, as though he feared destiny might slip away if he paused for breath. He issued edicts restoring stability, punishing corruption, and reorganizing administration. He elevated loyal generals, integrated defeated soldiers, and strengthened the frontiers. But his most revolutionary actions were spiritual. He began supporting Christian communities openly, granting them protection, privileges, and influence. While he did not abolish Rome's old religions, he shifted the balance of power. Churches expanded. Bishops gained prominence. Pagan temples lost their absolute hold on public life. Rome, the eternal city, the bastion of ancient gods, began to change. Slowly, at first, subtly, but inevitably. And yet, Constantine remained pragmatic. He did not force conversion. He did not outlaw the old pantheon.
He governed with a vision that blended tradition and innovation, understanding that empires cannot be transformed overnight. But he also believed that the sign he saw in the sky, the cross of light, had chosen him to reshape the world. Within a decade, he moved the capital, not to Rome, but to a new city, Constantinople, symbolizing a new era, a new beginning, a new Rome rising from the ruins of the old. And in the East, he would eventually defeat his remaining rivals, uniting the empire under a single ruler for the first time in generations. But all of this, all the reforms, all the transformations, all the spiritual and political revolutions began with one battle, one decision, one vision at a riverbank. The world we know today, its religions, its nations, its art, its laws, owes its shape to what happened at the Milvian Bridge. And Constantine understood this. He knew he had not merely won a civil war, he had changed history's trajectory. But even he could not foresee how far that change would spread. When historians look back across the vast landscape of Roman history, its rise, its conquests, its emperors, its tragedies, there is a single moment that stands out as a turning point so profound that everything afterward unfolded in its shadow: the victory of Constantine at the Milvian Bridge. Before that battle, Rome was an empire of many gods, many rulers, many crises. After that battle, it became an empire with a single ruler and a single future, one that would eventually champion a faith destined to reshape continents. Constantine had walked into the most dangerous gamble an emperor could take, a march on Rome itself. He faced a ruler with more soldiers, more money, more fortifications. He risked everything, and he won. Not simply through strategy, discipline, or courage, though he possessed all three, but through a moment of revelation that no historian,
no general, no emperor could have predicted. The vision in the sky, the sign on the shields, the bridge that collapsed, the drowning of a tyrant, the peaceful entry into Rome, the birth of a new capital, the rise of a new faith, the forging of a new world. Civil wars decide rulers, revolutions decide futures, but the Battle of the Milvian Bridge did both. Constantine became not merely the emperor who reunited Rome, but the emperor who transformed it. His decisions shaped the Middle Ages, influenced the Renaissance, guided empires, guided kings, and redefined the spiritual landscape of the planet. And yet, at its core, the story remains beautifully simple. One battle, one river, one vision, one man who believed he could change the world, and did. The Roman Empire would endure for another 1,000 years in the East, its legacy spreading across continents. But the moment it was reborn, the moment a fractured empire found unity and direction, was the day Constantine won a crown on the edge of a river on a wooden bridge that could not hold. History remembers many warriors, many emperors, many conquerors, but only one man won the Roman Empire in a single battle, and in doing so, shaped the world we live in today.